What is up, everybody, and welcome into the Locked On Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Matas, flying solo today as Matt Moore continues his vacation, undisclosed location. He'll be back next week. Today's episode, we just want to thank you for making us your first listen. I don't usually do these as the intro, so I'm always a little rusty on it. But thanks for making Locked On Nuggets your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Today's show, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday, talking about the rookie class, this time talking about the two-way players. Yesterday we did Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Ismail Kamagate. What is the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and then sort of an official prediction for how those guys are going to do. I'm going to do that today, but instead for Colin Gillespie and, of course, Jack White. And so we can dive into it. And at the very end, a very short segment, I'm just going to talk about three things to get excited about for the rest of the offseason. It might be like a 3-minute segment, but we'll just kind of fly through it a little bit quickly. Our first guy here, Colin Gillespie, he's an interesting one. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of his. Loved what I saw from him at Summer League. Loved the way he played. A lot tougher than I expected. You know, he's really, when you read the scouting reports on him, it was his three-point shooting off the bounce. This is point guard play, but in particular, his ability to shoot off of the bounce as a three-point shooter that I think gives you hope. Like, okay, why is this guy good? To me, what stood out watching him at Summer League, his three-point shot was like, okay. He knocked down some shots. He was impressive. But what stood out to me was really all of his grasp of the game of basketball. And it's funny because if you go down the list of accolades, number one, he's an NCAA champion. I know that means something. Won in 2018 with Villanova. He's a Bob Cousy Award winner, best point guard in the country in NCAA. He's All-American, two-time All-American. He's the Big East Player of the Year 2 times, 2021 and 22, junior and senior year. He's the small conference. It's a big conference player of the year. First team All Big East. Second team All Big East before that. So 3 years where he's been at the top of the All East conference. And then he won Big East Tournament MVP in 2022, this last season as well. So this is a guy that already had like an enormous amount of accolades. So it's kind of funny that he came in and you get whittled down to, well, he could shoot the three off the bounce and then he could do some other stuff. To me, all-around player. And the comparisons to Monte Morris are actually pretty funny to me because I see it like totally the way that Monte Morris came in as a flyer. Like we'll see, this guy did everything good in college, but the NBA level, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. We'll see how it streaks out. I think watching him, I'm already like, I would be shocked if that guy didn't play in the NBA at some point, hopefully very soon. Was a guy that just kind of earned the team's trust. So if we go high end, what's the high end optimistic projection for him this year? We're, again, not saying this is going to happen, but saying this is the sort of best case scenario for him. I think he has a strong showing in camp. You come into camp, you right off the bat, it's like, you know, who's making, turning some heads? Colin Gillespie. You put him out there, and maybe even so much so that the coaching staff either says this or at least feels this, that, hey, Ish Smith, Colin Gillespie, we kind of like Colin. He's as good, if not better. It doesn't mean that he would beat him out. There's still the issue of you only have so many roster spots. You can only have two-way guys for so X amount. Maybe there's a better allocation of the resources. But I think that it's within the realm of possibility. You might even say more possible than people realize that he goes through camp 1-2 weeks, preseason, whatever. And by the end of that, Michael Malone and his staff behind closed doors are saying Colin Gillespie might be better than Ish Smith. We kind of like him there. So that's a high-end possibility. I still think he'll go to the G League, even if that's the case. Goes down to the G League and dominates it. I looked at Monte Morris's numbers, and he only played a couple games down in the G League. Looking at his numbers, 20 points, 5.5 assists, or 19 points, 5.5 assists. Could Colin be, they're not exactly identical players, but they are similar. Is 20 points, 6 assists out of the question for Colin if he's down there, has 10 games? Is it crazy to think he could score 20 points, 6 assists? I don't think so. High end, it's not what I would predict, but high end, absolutely, it's within the realm of possibility. And I think even more important to him and his success as a player would be 40% from three, with a healthy dose of those shots coming, again, off of the bounce. If he's a 40% somewhat volume three-point shooter, I don't think he's going to be like Klay Thompson or Steph Curry where they're getting 10, 11 up a game. But if he's getting 5, 6, 7 threes up a game as a guy that's playing, a majority of minutes, leading the team in minutes down in the G League, and he's shooting 40%, huge boost to his value. The coaching staff in the front office would have to be taking note of he's shooting volume. He's the lead guy. He's the number one guy in the scouting report, and he's putting up those kind of numbers. you can make plans going into the next season with him. We'll get to that in a second. And then if he has, this is another thing of brightest timeline. He clearly, to me, was the guy who seemed the most like the leader at Summer League. Now he's point guard, so it's to be expected. If he really helped Peyton Watson's growth as a player, to me, that's also within the realm of possibility that, yes, he's down there focused on himself, but if he also sort of brings out the best in Peyton and it allows an environment for Peyton while he's down there to be comfortable and they get a two-man game going, or, it's just one of those things where those guys are really connected, that's part of the brightest timeline, in my opinion, on Colin Gillespie. I don't know how you quantify that, but it would be a thing that I think we would hear stories about, and maybe guys talking about each other, those types of things. I think part of the brightest timeline again with him, gets a chance at the NBA level at some point and shines. So not just gets his minutes here or whatever, but he gets those minutes and actually plays really well. Maybe it's in December. Jamal Murray just needs some fatigue. It's 1 week they're giving him off. They call Colin Gillespie back up. Malone gets a wild hair and says, you know what, you're playing in front of Ish Smith this week. Go out there and show us what you got. And if he plays well, knocks down his three-point shots, makes no mistakes, to me, that would be, especially if it happens early enough in the season in November or December, it would be a thing that maybe changes the trajectory. Maybe you're like, you know what, we're going to send him back down to Grand Rapids, but only for a stint. Like, you go into it knowing, hey, we're sending you down for a week while the Nuggets are on this road trip. When they get back to Denver, we want you back with the team. Again, within the realm of possibility. And then the number one thing, if you actually said, how do you quantify success for Colin Gillespie next season? The number one thing to me would be, do the Nuggets make their roster decisions with confidence that he can be a rotation player in 23-24. So whatever happens this year, I can't see him playing in the playoffs. I can't see him never being in the G League. Like, those things I think are inevitably going to happen. But does he make a strong enough impact the same way Monte Morris did in his rookie season when he went down to the G League, to where when Calvin Booth reconvenes with his team next offseason, they say, you know what, Colin Gillespie, one of our guys, have him on a cheap contract, sign him to a real deal, and he's one of our guys. And now we don't have to worry about one spot. It's almost like a free agent signing next year. You feel that confident in him. I think it's possible. That's the hardest piece. I think he can go down there and be pretty good, shoot 38%, maybe score 15 points. You'd look at it and go like, hey, these are pretty good numbers. But would you go in, similar to Kamagate, would Calvin Booth feel the confidence of going into a season saying, you know what, we don't need to bring back so-and-so, whatever player X it is, we don't need to bring them back because we have Collin. To me, him being able to make them comfortable enough to make that call would be the brightest timeline for him and his development. The low end, we go to the other side of this. The low end is he doesn't have a noteworthy camp at all and doesn't really push the starters. One of the things I'm a little concerned with when we talk about the Nuggets this year, it's not a big concern because you just don't practice that much, but we might see it in training camp. If you get Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon, KCP, can that group be challenged in preseason? Like, is that group going to be pushed? And then you go to the second unit there and you got Bones and Murray going at each other. That sounds fun. But then you've got, Bruce Brown and KCP matched up together, Davon Reed and Michael Porter. Okay, that's lopsided. Zeke Naji and Aaron Gordon, that feels pretty lopsided. And then Jeff Green and Jokic, extremely lopsided. Even bring in DeAndre Jordan, put him out there, extremely lopsided. So I feel like the first unit is probably going to dominate in training camp, to the way that I don't know how hard they'll be pushed, and I don't know how much that's going to create the right amount of friction for training camp. Maybe it will. Bones is a gamer, so maybe he brings it. But then you go to the third string, and you start thinking like Peyton Watson's going to be out there. You're going to have Vlatko Cancar, Ish Smith. Those guys, I think, there's no way they're going to be able to step on a court with Jokic and Murray and those guys. It seems like that would be extremely lopsided. Colin Gillespie has a chance to be one of those guys that makes Murray work and does this. So if he doesn't push the starters, could that be a thing that makes this training camp a little bit of a waste? Not a total waste, of course. Can't put all of that on a player, but just a little bit, to where it's like, man, we really have three tiers of teams: a great one, a mediocre one, and a terrible one, and that changes things. 14 points or less. It's the G League. I don't know that he's a volume scorer, but I still think he can get up 14 points. Like I said, Monte was getting 19, so 14 or lower would be okay, we're not playing that well. And then a 4-2 assist to turnover ratio. Like Monte Morris, Colin Gillespie is a guy that takes care of the basketball. It's part of his intrigue, is he's not a guy making a ton of mistakes. If you get down to that 1-2, so 4 assists, 2 turnovers, to me, I think that would be one of those things that gives the coaching staff pause of, hey, if he's turning it over that much in the G League, what's he going to be like at the NBA level? 35% from three, and more importantly, pour off the bounce. I think he's a good enough shooter that 37%, he's going to get that. or higher, and then you hope higher. If he's down in the 35% range, you start to wonder about his effectiveness as a player. This is like Marcus Howard. Marcus Howard needed to shoot 40% from three because it was his only skill. And if he didn't have that, then what do you have? If Colin Gillespie, you can sell him as, hey, athletically, defensively, he's maybe average or a little bit below, but we feel like he's above average in this other way. It's got to be three-point shooting. So 35% or lower to me would be a little bit disappointing. That would make this difficult for him. And then the number one thing on the low end here is if defense is an issue against the quality guards. He'll be in the G League, but the G League does have a lot of like scoring guards. They're not like good enough and well-rounded enough, and they're not quite good enough as scorers to be like a Kemba Walker or something like that, but they're right on the cusp, and teams are taking a flyer to see if they develop a little, round out their game better. So he's going to have guys that are going to test him on speed and quickness and step back threes and things like that. If he just gets cooked, if he's one of those guys that you put him out there and plays good positional defense, whatever, but guys are just constantly dropping 25, 30 on him, that'll be another data point for the Nuggets front office to say, hey, we're a little concerned. What's going to happen when he goes up against Kyrie and Westbrook even and Damian Lillard? Those would be some of the concerns. And so the low end would be you go into next season and he's just not brought back. This is a 1 year. He came in. Thank you for your service. We'll move on and cast a wide net, which, by the way, sounds harsh. It's what happens to most two-way players. Most two-way players come through the system. They spend a little bit of time, and then it's like, hey, that didn't hit. So this is by no means, when I say the low end, it's kind of more likely than I think people think. So now my prediction. What is my prediction for how this is going to go for him? My prediction is he has a strong showing at camp. I just think he's a worker. I think he's a ready-made player. He's already at a level that's adequate enough especially for a training camp. So I think he has a very good showing at camp and is probably one of the guys that stand out. If you ask me who of these rookie guys stands out the most, man, that's actually a tough question. I would probably say it's going to be, and in training camp, who get the most accolades. I'd probably go Gillespie number 1, Brown number 2, Jack White number 3, and then Peyton Watson number 4. That would probably be how I would power rank those. Although you could make a case for White, you could probably Peyton Watson's the one guy I think just is not set up to stand out in training camp in that way. So I predict he has a strong showing at camp, and the team likes him. They're like, you know what, this guy is pushing. Everybody's doing the right things. He doesn't make mistakes. He picks up. He's absorbing what's going on really, really quickly. That's my prediction. I think he has a very good season in the G League. I would guess somewhere around 17-5. So if Monte was 19-5.5, 17-5 seems safe for Colin Gillespie. I think he'll probably be around there. 38-ish% from three on volume, which is pretty good. It's enough for you to say, okay, this guy's an NBA three-point shooter. He adjusted to the line really well, but maybe not a guy that you know is going to be elite. And then if he shoots 38% on volume in the G League, I think as a front office, you could sit there and go, okay, one more year of just really honing in on that three-point line, the NBA extended three-point line. Could he get up to 45%? I think you could talk yourself into that, or 40%. I think you could talk yourself into that. I think he'll have 5 assists, 2 turnovers. So a little bit better of a ratio, worse than a Monte Morris, but a little bit better, above that threshold where you feel pretty confident about him. And then here's my take, my prediction. I think the Nuggets bring him back next season as a third-string point guard on a minimum. I think he's in the system. I don't know that it's going to be like Monte where it's like, assumed he'll be penciled in as the number 2 guy. I think he'll come in probably as the number 3 guy, but a guy that they hope maybe can play a little bit alongside Murray, alongside Bones. And so he's a guy that's in that rotation. That's my prediction. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's hit a quick break here. On the other side, though, we will get to Jack White. But first, I want to tell you about Built Bar. Let's see if I can do this for Matt. Built Bar. Oh, yes, it's Built Bar. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You've probably tried our coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, which is very good. But guess what? They've now given us the puff version of that coconut brownie chunk puff. And I have to say, actually, if you're going my own personal ones, I'm going off script here a little bit. If you're going on your own personal best ones, I've always said churro is my number 1. They have mud pie that they sent us. They both the puff version and the regular version, both of them 10 out of 10. Absolutely fantastic. Anytime I get one of the boxes in the mail, that's the first one I try to go to. It's really, really good. But coconut brownie chunk puffs are also really great. You want to check them out. You go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. So go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15. Back here, segment 2 of the Locked On Nuggets podcast. And now we're going to talk about Jack White, the final piece of the Nuggets 2022 roster. He was the last guy signed to a two-way deal. And he has an interesting story. So he showed up to training camp late for Summer League. He basically did not get a day to participate with him. He had arrived like the morning of a practice. I think he participated in some parts. And so you didn't know what to expect. There wasn't a ton of buzz around him. I thought easily was the best guy at training camp. Just easily stood out more than Mitchell and Arms and Grady and any of the other guys that maybe were vying for it. You know, Jonte Porter, I'm a big fan of his, and I love the like Jonte Michael Porter connection. First of all, I'll say hopefully these guys stay around. I don't know if Jonte will work back through the Nuggets G League system. I don't know what's best from him and how that works for a player that's already been in the NBA coming off of injuries. But I would love to see it because I just like Jonte's game a lot. I liked his personality a lot, and I'd love for him to be around the team. I think that'd be a good thing. But the same goes for Mitchell and Arms. Like those guys I think are going to be in the Nugget system, and you never know. Like maybe there's an opportunity down the line for these guys to really shine and make the Nuggets roster. With Jack White, you know, he could cross me as a guy that is very polished, very smart, and versatile. Like he can do a bunch of different things. I think he'll be like Colin Gillespie and Christian Brown in terms of guys that I think pick up what's going on right away. Like you get through training camp, Jack White probably going to be a guy that learns the terminology very quickly, kind of learns the defensive schemes because he's been playing professionally. You know, he's already been through this. So if we go high end on some of the stuff, again, I have this in my notes, high end makes a strong impression in camp. Yes, this has been a recurring theme for all of the rookies, but when you talk about rookie guys, it really is the number one thing is you come into training camp, nobody knows who you are. I promise you, Jokic is going to see Jack White the first time and be like, who's that guy? Like, who's the new guy? So you make a strong impression, and your teammates are like, you know what? That's a guy, he battles. He does the right thing. He doesn't make mistakes. He knows who he is. That's how you make an impression. And then on top of that, you're just not a guy that is barbecue chicken in every one of the drills. I think up, again, brightest timeline, shoots the ball extremely well in the G League, 40% on decent volume. He's a guy that doesn't force threes. He's going to take mostly catch and shoot threes, mostly open catch and shoot threes. That's what he's been in his career. It's easily, even in talking to some people around the team, like, hey, tell me about Jack White. It's always like, love everything he does. Well, you know, love his game. He really gets it, whatever. But that three-point shot is really going to make or break him. They don't say like, oh, he doesn't have a three-point shot. It's that is going to be the swing factor. If he shoots the ball well, he's a player. And when I say shoots the ball well, by the way, like Torrey Craig would shoot the ball well, you know, 35% or whatever, but he would have times when he go out there and hit 3-4 threes. The thing about Torrey Craig is you never trusted it. You were thankful when it arrived and you knew that in average it came out to like slightly below the threshold that would get you excited, but it was like up and down, up and down. I think with Jack White, you could hope for high end that he becomes a very reliable 40% three-point shooter, that pretty much every game he's knocking down those shots. So it's not a guy you're running plays for, like, ooh, we got to get Jack White a three-point touch, but he's a guy that knocks him down when he's open and then earns that reputation over the course of an entire season and even beyond, where he earns the reputation of, well, we can't just leave him open. Like, we got to run him off the line or whatever, because I think he's a good decision maker outside of that. He did have some really bad turnovers in the summer league. Like, they weren't many, but when he had some of them were like, oof, I'm kind of surprised he did that. So we'll see. Maybe we have a bad read. We didn't get that much view of him, but I think he's a guy that if you run him off the line, he's going to be able to take one dribble, keep the ball moving. He had good swing passes, seems like a good connector piece. So again, shooting 40% on volume, I think, is the part that would get you most excited about, hey, maybe this is more than just a two-way guy. Maybe this is somebody to be in the developmental pipeline for the Nuggets. I think he gets, again, upside, gets a chance to play with the real Nuggets at some point in the season. If you look at where the Nuggets are most vulnerable, to me, it's so obvious. It's as a second defender in that second unit out on the perimeter. You've got Bruce Brown. That's one. Although I think he's a better defender at like small forward-esque, but maybe a little bit of shooting guard, but mostly like bigger shooting guards. And then you got Zeke Naji and Vlatko Čančar and Jeff Green, who can guard more interior, but they're not going to be out on the perimeter too much. Jack White, to me, then you have Davon Reed, you got Christian Brown. Those guys are fighting for that reputation as well as the guy like, oh, we need someone to go out there on the perimeter and guard maybe a Jordan Clarkson, you know, like a taller guy off of the bench who can shoot. You know, maybe those guys work their way into it. But Jack White might be a guy that gets called up again with injuries, or maybe you're just looking for a different defensive look. He gets an opportunity and excels in it and just plays well. Again, within himself, it's not going to be flashy. I don't see Jack White coming into the NBA, getting a chance to play 15 minutes one game in January and all of a sudden having 30 points. It's not going to be like that. but I could see him being a guy that the team just trusts. And it's like, you know what? That's a piece to have in your back pocket and has a Torrey Craig-like impact on the Nuggets. Torrey Craig didn't like light the world on fire, but when he arrived, he provided something the Nuggets didn't have, and it stood out so much that you were like, you know what? This guy needs to play actual minutes. I could see, in fact, if you remember Torrey Craig's first year, I think the debate about whether or not to convert him early because he was playing so well when he did come up, that was like raging. I could see a similar thing with Jack White. I think it's less likely in part because of where the Nuggets are. But with injuries, you never know. And if he shows up and does a good job, it might be a guy where you're like, you know what, it's probably worth opening up a spot for the playoffs because we just might need him in case of emergency. Solid defense, good connector, hustler, reliable enough shooter, and then earns the trust of as a second or third string player for the next season. Again, best case scenario, you go through the whole system and the Nuggets next year look at that and go, he can be a second or third string guy, and that's like a free agent signing on a minimum. And remember, the Nuggets going forward with max contracts to 3 different players, with a big contract signed to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for the next couple of years, and even slightly bigger contract to Aaron Gordon, you're going to have to fill out the roster on these minimum deals. You're not looking for these guys to be superstars. You're looking at them to be guys that you could put on minimum contracts that give you that you feel good enough going forward that they can be second or third string players. For him, that's the brightest timeline. Low end, shoots poorly in the G League. This is the easiest one. Like, his shot is such a swing factor. If he's a 30% three-point shooter, then you look at it and you go, yeah, for all the rebounding, all the defense, doesn't matter. He's not going to be that guy for the Nuggets at the next level. You can't trust him. Teams are going to not guard him at the NBA level. And then you just have little confidence to try him with the Nuggets, and he doesn't get any chances or he gets very few chances. I think this is very much within the realm of possibility, by the way, but it would be low end if he just never plays a second with the minutes. Like, it'd be like, or with the Nuggets, it'd be like, okay, that's a little bit of a drag. We never got a look at him. We only saw him playing against the Reno Bighorns and those teams. And then again, low end, 1 year stint, Grand Rapids Gold, and then he's out of there. We never hear from him again. More likely than not. My prediction, I think he makes that strong impression in training camp just because I think he's about the right things. Like, he gets it. I think he's a guy that's going to be a good body for drills and pushing everybody. I think he'll be good at that. He'll rebound. He'll make you box out. I think he shoots the 3-ball decent in the G League, 37% on low volume, but my prediction is it's going to be very streaky. I think he'll have hot months, hot weeks, and cold weeks, cold months. And that'll be the part that I think gives the Nuggets the most pause. If you broke down at the end of the year, November, December, January, February in the G League, and he has a 43% month and a 33% month and a 40% month and a 36% month, and it all comes out to 37, I think you look at that and go, I don't know if he's a shooter or not. He gets hot sometimes or he plays like this. But if he has like every month is 37%, then I think you can step back and look at that and say, okay, not a great 3-point shooter, but not a bad one. And he's going to knock down X amount. That would be really, that would be good. I think he's going to be 37%, but with a little bit more variation. I think he rebounds really well. I think he plays really smart. I think he gets one and only one shot over the course of 2 or 3 games where he fills in as a bit player. And it's somewhat unremarkable, neither good nor bad. I think the Nuggets find themselves next season in a really, really tough decision. Probably, I already said you're going to have Colin Gillespie as a guy you're counting on. I think they're going to have Christian Braun as a guy they're going to count on, as in like, hey, this guy next year, not this year, but the sophomore season, we're going to count on him for 15 to 20 minutes a night. That's already 2 guys that even if you feel good about, you're not 100% confident on. I don't know that you could use another. And then you have Peyton Watson. You're probably going to have Kamagate coming over. I don't know that you can use a 5th roster spot on a player that you don't feel, that great about. So Jack White, to me, is a guy that would have to really shine for the Nuggets to go into next offseason and say, no, we need to bring that guy back. He's our new Torrey Craig or whatever it is. He would have to really, really, really play well this year and get chances to play at the Nuggets level and probably impress for him to make that decision easy on the Nuggets next season. I don't see it. I see the Nuggets being in a tough spot and probably letting him go. And maybe another team picks him up next year on a kind of a flyer, like, hey, we'll see what happens. Similar to a Kenrich Williams type situation. So that's kind of my prediction on Jack White. I really like him, by the way. I really like him as a player. I just don't know if it's going to work out for Denver in that way. Let's take one last break on the other side. Super quick segment as we get out of here, talking about 3 things I'm looking forward to here in the next month. All right, back here on the Locked On Nuggets podcast, 3rd and final segment. Matt Moore still on vacation. Myself, Adam Mata, still grinding away for you guys here. 3 things I'm looking forward to. between now and we'll say the next month, because we've got about 6 weeks where we're in the desert. Yeah, it's about 6 weeks. Jokic plays on September 1st. Nikola Jokic should be suited up and playing for Serbia in the Eurobasket tournament. Should be very exciting. So we only got about 6 weeks where we're not going to have any Nuggets like breaking news or this or that. Once Jokic starts playing, hey, I know it's not the Nuggets, but we're all going to get to see Jokic play. And he plays every other day for like 2 weeks. So we're going to see a lot of basketball with Jokic out there. I know that will be enough to tide me over and then after that's over, it's only going to be like 2 weeks before the first preseason game. So basketball is not that far away, but there is this desert area that we are approaching now, 6 weeks or so, where we're not going to have any basketball unless LeBron goes or Jamal Murray shows up at the Drew League or something like that. By the way, not on my list. If we get a Michael Porter mixtape, like we get a bunch of Aaron Gordon mixtapes. I saw a video of him. He played in the Colorado Pro-Am like yesterday, early over the weekend or something like that, and somebody put together a little mixtape on it. But Michael Porter, hopefully we get a mixtape of him. I just would love to see some video from his training staff or something of him shooting. Same goes for Jamal Murray. Same goes for Bones Highland. This time of day, everybody's so thirsty to get anything that hopefully we get a couple of those. Number one thing I'm most excited about. At some point in the upcoming weeks, I would guess, if I were a betting man, I would guess this happens sometime around 4 weeks from now. I think we're going to see the new jerseys from the Nuggets. I believe there is at least 2 new jerseys that should be coming for the Nuggets this year. 2 new alternates. I think their regular jerseys stay, the navy blue and the white, which is unfortunate. I'm ready to move on from them. I feel like they're a little boring, whatever. I also love the Nuggets Mile High City jerseys, the royal blue ones. I think those ones might be done. I'm not certain, but I think they might be done. There was a leak of a Nuggets Denver Rockets throwback, which I actually really like personally. They wore them once in the Melo era, a white jersey with a black and orange trim. That's a throwback to way, way back in the 60s when the Nuggets were in the ABA and with the Rockets. It would be cool to see that. To me, I think those jerseys are really like clean looking, simple, but I like them. And I just love anytime the Nuggets pay homage to their ABA history. I think the Nuggets are an ABA team. I mean, they are an ABA team. They come from the ABA. But when you think of the ABA, to me, those are the Nuggets are a quintessential ABA team. Their name is the Nuggets. It's like silly. It's goofy. The ABA was like not too full of itself. It was like willing to have like conquistadors and amigos and spirits. Like they had funny names to them, like goofy out of the box names. Nuggets fits that. So I like when they pay homage to that. In addition to, I just think the jerseys are really cool. If they get those white and orange and black jerseys, if it is a real leak, which I'm not convinced it is, by the way, but if it is a real leak, I'll be excited for that. I'll probably get one because I just think those jerseys are really cool. So we'll get that. We might get 2 of them. We might end up getting one. Now, traditionally, Nike has revealed summer jerseys, and then they've kept one in their pocket, like one alternate jersey for one big release reveal that they do usually like the first or second week of the regular season. So we might only get one, but you know what? That's still cool. I still love to see it. Number 2, I mentioned it already, but Eurobasket. Jokic will be joining the team here in like 1 month. So we'll probably start to get, as soon as he starts joining them, I don't know if they have any friendlies that he's going to participate in or practices or what have you, but we're not that far away from Eurobasket, which should be a lot of fun. And it's not just Jokic that'll be playing. I think there's a handful of NBA guys that'll be around on the various teams. So I actually think it's going to be pretty good basketball. And then lastly, the schedule, everybody's favorite, usually comes off second week of August, sometime around August 10th or so, the schedule drops. Now, why is this one particularly important? Famously, Jokic won the MVP, but did not get a Christmas game. I thought that was insane. I think the Nuggets are back on Christmas this year. I think there's going to be there was too much pushback for that. They're going to correct and try to give them that. But here's the other thing I'm most interested in. The Nuggets, the last 2 years, they go to the Western Conference Finals in the bubble, okay? Then they come back and they run it back. They had a good amount of like national television games, probably not as many as you think they should have deserved. But I think getting Murray back, having Jokic a 2-time MVP, having Bones Highland, who I think made a name for himself, Michael Porter coming back, Aaron Gordon, even KCP. I just wonder where the Nuggets rank this year in the hierarchy of teams that the NBA says, hey, these are teams we want to promote. These are teams that we feel are going to help us sell. I kind of suspect, and this is such a foolish thing, like every year I'm like Charlie Brown right now, swinging for the football again and landed on my ass. But I think that the Nuggets this year are going to have more excitement around them than we've seen in the Jokic era. What I mean by that is I wouldn't be surprised if you are all surprised by how many national television games they get. If it gets bumped up just a little bit. Now, there's a lot of good teams out there. The Clippers are also back. The Warriors are back. Like, they're going to eat up a lot of the West Coast games. But like, Utah's gone. They're going to be out of there, a little bit. I wonder if Phoenix has already run its course and teams are kind of ready for a new thing. I think Denver, Dallas, maybe even a little bit. Like, Luka's there, but they lost some of their pieces. I just wonder if Denver is going to get a little bit more front page coverage this year nationally, and especially true if they win early. But I think when the schedule comes out, I think they're going to get a Christmas Day game. I wouldn't be surprised if they got like an MLK Day, an opening night day. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they push the Nuggets a little bit harder than they have in the past. So that'll be fun to look forward to and something I'll be analyzing. That does it for today, guys. I'm going to be off tomorrow, but I will be back on Thursday with a brand new show, trying to hone in a guest. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button. There was no comments, so I'm guessing I did something to screw up the comments today. Either that or just nobody wanted to talk today. Well, there you go.